Winter in Vale, a mystery novella series by Miles Ledoux. Book 8, The Third Will. Excerpt from Chapter 1. Violet spun about with a gasp. It was the third time she'd done so today. Just as with the previous two occasions, there was no one lurking behind her. Why did she keep having that feeling? She drew a deep breath, inhaling the flavorful aroma of exotic herbs and spices, and tried to rein in her focus back to the present. One by one, she pressed the tip of the label gun to the jars of blackberry jam sitting on the shelf. Between the mystery of her own identity and the startling frequency of crime in this small town, Violet's interests had tended toward a career as an investigator, perhaps a sheriff's deputy. Nevertheless, while she pursued her goals, she needed to earn a living. On this she'd insisted, regardless of her host's ongoing generosity. 2 months ago, she'd helped prevent the abduction of a baby girl. The baby's 39-year-old grandmother showed her gratitude by giving Violet a part-time job in her dry goods store on Main Street. "'Tis the Seasoning." An interesting name, Violet thought, given that the grandmother and her family were Jewish. The best thing about working here, Violet had found, was that it gave her a chance to truly become acquainted with the Vale townsfolk. Among the store's patrons, she met Trevor Burns, a professional snowplower and lawnmower in the summer, who was also a stage musician. She met Eva McNeil, a sex ed teacher who had once been a pole dancer. With the gift of a perfect memory, Violet could have retained the surface details even if they'd been mentioned in passing amidst a flurry of other trivia, but she preferred it like this. Getting to speak to people one at a time, in a quiet little shop where the pace was slow, suited her much better. She was able to get to know her neighbors for who they were, rather than just sets of memorized facts. "Violet," called the diminutive Joy Dosley from the register, "would you help this gentleman while I take a delivery?" "Yeah, sure." Violet laid the label gun on a shelf and headed for the register. The man standing there was someone she'd never seen before. He was tall, thin, in his 40s, she guessed. Depending on how talkative he was, she might be about to make a new friend. "How can I help you?" she asked from behind the register. The man hadn't brought any items to the counter, so he probably wanted to ask a question. "You're Violet?" The man had a pleasant, if a bit oily, voice. It went with the suit and tie poking out from the collar of his heavy winter coat. "That's me," said Violet. Occasionally people came to the store just to satisfy their curiosity about her. It had been awkward at first, but with Cy's help she'd reached the point where she didn't mind anymore. The man reached into a pocket, withdrew an envelope, and held it out to her. "You've been served." Violet blinked. "Excuse me?" Since she hadn't taken the proffered envelope, the man laid it on the counter. "My name is Henry Glass. My clients are suing you for identity fraud." Violet came close to laughing, but the lawyer's steady gaze extinguished the impulse. His eyes betrayed a hint of smugness. "I think you're mistaking me for someone else," she told him. Glass smiled and shook his head. "No," he said. Then he turned to leave. "Wait a minute!" Violet ran out in front of him. "I don't know anything about this. I haven't claimed a false identity. I've spent the last 3 months trying to find out my identity." "How very philosophical," Glass said with amused disinterest. "Who is it I'm supposed to have claimed to be?" Violet demanded. "And when?" Glass drew a breath with an affected air of patience. "I have found ample evidence that on October 15th of last year you made claim to the identity of Roberta Lamwich." Violet's head reeled. Lamwich was a name she'd run into on several occasions here in Vale, but the very first time she'd heard it, October 15th, was a day that burned glaringly bright in her memory, for it was the earliest day she could remember. It was the day she'd woken up with amnesia. Cy was the first person she'd encountered, and Violet still couldn't believe her luck. Operating on the theory that someone in Vale must know her true identity, Cy had kindly taken Violet under her wing and tried to help her find that someone. One of the first people they'd consulted was Delphine Burgess, an elderly woman who knew practically everyone in Vale. Delphine had indeed recognized Violet, or thought she did. Violet gave Glass a very strange look. "You don't mean the Roberta Lamwich who disappeared 42 years ago?" "The very same." This time Violet did laugh. "You've definitely gotten your facts mixed up. I've never claimed to be that woman. Someone once—" She paused, remembering Delphine overcome with excitement, certain that she was in the presence of the vanished Roberta, convinced that Violet was the reincarnation of the woman's spirit. It had taken much coaxing by bystanders to persuade Delphine that such was not the case. "Someone once suggested that I'm Roberta, but no one took it seriously, certainly not me." Glass took a nonchalant step toward her, his shoes echoing on the wood-paneled floor. "You say someone suggested it." That's right. Glass took another step, laid his fingers on a container of sage, as if distracted. Did they suggest it as a joke? No, not exactly. Hmm. Glass turned his attention to a sprig of lavender. Of course, this person's suggestion wasn't in any way prompted by you, was it? What? No, of course not. I see. So this alleged person just randomly and arbitrarily suggested that you were Roberta Lamwich, an individual who, when located, just happens to be in line to inherit a substantial fortune. Taken aback, Violet struggled to maintain her focus. I didn't ask at the time why she said it, but until that moment I had never heard of Roberta Lamwich. So naturally, you refuted the suggestion. Whatever Violet might have been about to say died on the tip of her tongue. She recalled her desperation on that first day, her urgency, her overwhelming need to find out who she really was. Delphine had gotten Violet's hopes up at first, identifying her as the missing woman. But when it later came out that the woman had vanished almost half a century ago, Violet had walked away in a huff, lest she flip out in front of all those strangers. I had other things on my mind, she protested. Then, suddenly wondering why she was on the defensive, she added, Besides, there wasn't any need to refute it. It was an absurd idea. I'm clearly not old enough to be Roberta. No one would believe it. And yet someone suggested it, without any prompt from you, or so you said. At last he looked her in the eye. She could see the gleam of triumph that she'd fallen into his trap. Shaking her head in disgust, she grabbed the envelope from the counter and held it out to him. Look, this is ridiculous. Just tell your clients I'm not after their money, or Roberta's, or whatever. If they want me to sign something swearing I'm not Roberta Lamwich, I'll do it. There's no need for a lawsuit. For a moment, Glass didn't move or speak. Then he reached out slowly, as if with deliberate consideration, and started to grasp the envelope. Violet had just begun to breathe a sigh of relief when he said, So you're retracting your insinuation that you're Roberta Lamwich. Violet might have been short, but she could still level a decimating glare, and glare she did. I can't retract a statement that I never made to begin with. With an exaggerated expression of regret, Glass let go of the envelope. I'm afraid that's not going to be good enough for my clients. Violet stared at him incredulously. If your clients are so worried about me, why did they wait so long? Why didn't they just come to me? We could have talked and worked it out. An attempt was made to contact you over a month ago. This brought her up short. How? Correspondence was mailed to you, care of the Vale Sheriff's Department. I never got it! Glass shrugged with a sorrowful smile, though Violet could tell he wasn't sorry at all. Then my clients are going to have to take you to court. He strode to the door, then pivoted back and after a measured pause said, I doubt that a courthouse is the most optimal place for a person with no identity. Snow billowed through the door as he exited.